Hey guys, it's Fahad here. Welcome back to the channel. I am super excited for today's episode where I have joining me here today my partner for life, my soulmate, my wife, beautiful wife here, Iqra. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm excited to have you here. Are you nervous?
Me too. No, not nervous, just different.
So today, you've been watching me do the content here a little bit, and what did you say to me? You said, my content's a little bit boring. It's a little bit geared towards the guys, right?
Yeah.
And you wanted to come on here and say, give the female point of view, because as we all know, when it comes to relationships, marriages, even some businesses, women run the show. Do they not?
Absolutely.
All right, so let's get started here. And today we're just going to talk about kind of how we started, our story, because a lot of people have been asking you this, right?
So I think that when I got married, I think one of my biggest, not concerns, but one of my main conversations with Fahad, even while we were dating, was around finances. And kind of like what our idea was like around saving money, making money, and where we wanted to kind of go financially. So I think that when we got married, you and I had already determined that we were kind of on the same page, like money wise. We both like making money and we both like saving it. I like to spend it. I like to spend it. Fahad does not.
Yeah.
But I think that when we got married, it was weird because it was the peak of COVID and I was not working. Fahad was working, but he was remote. So I think that it was just kind of a perfect time for us to kind of reevaluate what we had been doing and what we could do differently. Like that's kind of like when we did that first flip at Tanglewild.
Yeah.
It was like a 2-bedroom townhome, 3-bedroom?
Two bedroom, 2 bath.
Yeah.
I think it was like 1,400 square foot.
Yeah, it was just like a
Townhouse.
small little townhouse, and we made so many mistakes, but it was a learning experience. I feel like if we had never done that, we wouldn't have done anything. We would have never gotten started.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that like as a couple, I feel like it tested us because it was so early on. We had only been married about 3.5 months, and Fahad and I only dated for 4 months before we got married. So, I mean,
We'll get into that story in a
yeah.
little bit too.
So, I mean, it was like I had known this person for 7 months, and we were essentially doing like our first investment together, flipping a house, and yeah, like so many things went wrong, and I don't even remember how much we profited on that house. I think it was like $2,000.
Something like that.
Like,
Something like that.
I think barely that. And even that was like at the end, we were like, I don't think we're gonna make any money. I think we're gonna lose money on this house. So it was kind of stressful, especially because I wasn't even working at the time.
Right.
So it was, we learned so much from it, and I think that Fahad and I grew as a couple together because it really helped us see like we had a lot of mutual goals, and I think it taught us to kind of look at things long term and not just have a shorthanded vision.
Yeah, I think we can definitely, we have so much to tell about our marriage and what the track that we've been on for the past almost 5 years.
Yeah.
But for all the people out there who don't know you yet, let's talk about how you got to before marriage. Where are you from? Where were you brought up? And what was your kind of financial literacy and upbringing and stuff like that?
My parents are divorced, and I think that really shaped the way that I looked at finances because I feel like I've always worked, and I think that a reason for that is because I was raised by a single mom, and I did support her a lot financially, and I think that really forced me to learn about money a lot sooner than a lot of other people do. So I think that even like when I was a teenager, like in high school, I was already kind of thinking about like how do I save money? Like what is the appropriate amount of money that I should, when I make a paycheck, what is the appropriate amount that I should be spending and saving? So, and I was thinking about these things like at the age of 16. And I think that came from I always tell Fahad this, that I always had this fear that I would like run out of money one day. Like one day I would just like look at my bank account and I wouldn't have anything there.
So like real quick, when you're talking about how much I should save in my paycheck and stuff like. Where are you learning that? Are you, because you don't have anybody teaching you this stuff
Right.
in school, or is there somebody at home? Where are you getting your inspiration?
Yeah.
And thoughts
So,
from?
I feel like in our culture and like with our parents, like being immigrant parents, there are like a lot of parents from that generation are also not financially literate. So they also sometimes don't know how to teach you the appropriate way to spend and save money and what do we even do, right? Once we
They know
make
how
it.
to work hard
Yeah.
and save
And live paycheck to
yeah.
paycheck. And I didn't know like how to not do that, but what I did know is that I didn't want to live my life like that, like just paycheck to paycheck and
Right.
waiting for, the first of the month to come before I can buy something, And I think that when I was like 16, 17 years old, the way that I learned was whenever I would make money from my job, I would be like, okay, this is the amount of money that I'm going to allow myself to spend this month. And no matter what, I have to save this much. Like, I
Wow,
don't care
awesome.
if that
That's
means
discipline
like
right
I
there.
have to like skip lunch. Like,
Wow.
I'm not gonna spend it. And on top of that, my very first credit card, it was a Discover card. It was a student Discover card and it
Okay.
had a $500 limit on it.
Oh, big spender.
Okay, so in hindsight, like think about having a credit card with a $500 limit,
For a
right?
16-year-old.
But well, at this point, I'm
Okay.
like, like 18, graduating,
Yeah.
starting off college. So yeah, I have a $500 limit on it, and keep in mind that I am like supporting my mom at this time. So I am like paying rent, I'm paying bills,
So
and I'm
just for
working.
kicks, what's your first job? Like what are you doing?
My very first job was at the age of 14.
14. Is that even legal?
Yeah, at the time it was legal. I don't know what the legal age is now.
Did you or did you not use your sister's fake ID?
I did not.
We
I
won't
did
tell. We won't
not.
tell.
I did not.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. So
I was
you actually
14
got
years
hired
old.
at 14.
Yes, and it
Okay.
was at Haagen-Dazs.
So what is emotionally? Are you stressed? Are you nervous? Are you scared? Are you hopeful for the future?
Yeah,
What are all
absolutely.
those
I
things?
was all of those things. I was always scared, always stressed, and I think that's where my fear of running out of money came from because I was always like on this tight budget. Like I'm trying to pay for college, I'm working full time, I'm trying to support my mom. I have this $500 credit limit, right? Like I didn't even get a
Yeah.
real credit card until I was like 21, I think. Which in hindsight is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, like at 21, not having a real credit card until that point. Um, so yeah, like I was just always, I feel like counting pennies. And all I could think about at that time was like, this is temporary. Like, there's just absolutely no
Yeah.
way I'm going to live my life like this. And I think that it showed, like, I think when we met, because one of the first conversations I had with you was about money.
Yes, it was.
It was about like, do you have debt? I never like came out and asked how much money do you make because obviously that's tacky. But I feel like I did kind of paint a picture of like the life that I wanted.
Right.
Right. I told you what kind of a house I dreamt
Yeah.
of and where I want to live and yeah, what my ambition
All right.
is. Right.
So okay, here's my question to you. You and I met when you were 30 years old, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I was 29, about to be 30.
correction. 29 going on 30.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Before you met me, right, in your 20s, all the other I'm open to this. I'm bringing this out there, guys. All the other guys before me who you went out with, dated, talked to, were you having were you asking these types of questions, those guys? Or was
Yeah.
it you just saved it until you got to me and gave me a hard time about it?
No, absolutely I was. And I think that for me, a red flag at that point, when you're dating like in your late 20s, a red flag to me is talking to somebody about finances and not receiving complete transparency in return. Like, I can understand, like, if in your early 20s, you're still kind of figuring it out, you're probably starting your first job. But in your late 20s, I think at that point, you kind of have established yourself as an adult, and you should be more comfortable with having an open conversation about what does money mean to you?
Yeah.
What do you see yourself doing with money in the future? And I feel like a lot of guys were not open to having a conversation like that, or they would withhold information, or just their mindset on money was very I guess like kind of selfish in a way, like
Yeah.
where my money is my money. And I just don't see a marriage working out like that. I think that in a marriage, there has to be a partnership, and now everything is ours, right? There's no mine and yours anymore.
Yeah. So for all the people out there who are currently still in the dating pool, what would you say, like what's an appropriate date number that these types of conversations should be? Date, obviously not the first date, second, third, fourth, and should it be the guy kind of initiating these topics, or is it
Yeah.
okay in this day and age for women to take the lead and bring it up?
Yeah. So I personally had the conversation on our third date. I'm not saying that there's like some rule that you have to wait until date 3 to have the conversation. Obviously, it's wherever your comfort level lies. And I definitely don't think you need to wait for him to bring it up. I think that now, when we're living at a time when women are working just as much as the men are, we're making just as much as the men are. So I think it's well within our right to bring up that conversation ourselves and ask the questions that we need answered. Because I mean, essentially, this is the rest of your life, right? And finances are a big part of it. So, yeah, I think the earlier you have the conversation, the better.
Yeah.
Depending on how important it is to you and if it's a deal breaker, if certain answers are going to be a deal breaker for you.
Well, I mean, how am I and I think this is where we kind of agreed on and we're on the same page, how this finances is like super important.
Yeah.
It's a necessity. It's not something that should be taken lightly, or also like, hey, kick the can down the road. We'll figure it out later as we go, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying, of course, we had like a black and white plan of what we were going to do, but kind of like what you shared earlier, it's mutual goals, mutual targets of what we wanted to do, what we saw life being like, right? I definitely think that is important. As the guy, I would honestly say that I kind of appreciated the conversation. I thought it was nice and refreshing to finally meet somebody who was kind of cutting through the BS, right? Like, I like you, you like me. Now let's start talking brass taxes, right? And actually, I mean, maybe it's just me, but I actually enjoy talking numbers and finance and business.
Yeah.
So when you brought it up, I was like, oh, okay. I leaned in. Like, I can talk about this, right? I know about this. For everyone out there, we encourage you. Our advice would be to ask questions, such as what questions should they be asking? What's your debt?
Do you have debt?
Do you have debt?
Please
Student loans.
ask that question.
Student loans is okay, right? As long as you're
Yeah, I'm
doing
not
something.
saying cut somebody off because they have debt, but you definitely want to know about it before you sign a legal document and marry this person, right? Like you
If
don't
they
want to
have
find
credit
out
card
after.
debt, if they're like a
Absolutely.
huge shopper, or
And,
like
and you know, I don't want to say just for females, it's important. For men, it's equally important. You want to know if your wife has $20,000 worth of shopping debt or $200,000 worth of student loans. Those are two very different things.
Right.
Right. And I think that, you know, full transparency, I feel like I asked that was one of the first questions I asked. And when Fahad and I both learned that neither of us had debt, I was like, okay, I think that we're on the same page here. Because I think that really
we're starting from
showed
zero. We're not starting from behind, basically.
And it showed that we kind of have the same mindset
Yeah.
about, you know, pay your credit cards in full. Like, don't just pay like the minimum amount and don't let your bills stack up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on currently, even our generation, maybe kind of some of the people younger than us, post-COVID, this work from home environment, living at home with the parents? Green flag or big red flag? Or is it a case-by-case situation?
I would say it's a case-by-case situation, right? I mean,
and I'm talking about living with the parents, not the parents living with the kids. There's a difference there.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Who's supporting who?
I was just going to say that. So, yeah, it's a case-by-case situation. For me personally, I think it was really important that the guy kind of live on his own because I think it showed independence and that he is able to take care of himself. He's not depending on his parents to kind of pay his bills and cook for him. And, he's an adult.
The cooking part,
Yeah.
I still don't cook for myself.
There we go. There
God
you go.
bless you. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you're living with your, parents because they're elderly or, they need you, then that's a completely different situation. But yeah, I think that if you are able to, you should certainly take the opportunity to live on your own and learn what that's like and learn how to be independent and pay your own bills and not depend on your parents for that financial support.
Yeah.
Right?
So that's very, very interesting. Now, for those of you who don't know, me and Iqra, we just had our first child, a baby boy, earlier this summer. So we're super, super excited. We're in that new parent phase. How has motherhood, how's your mentality changed? How is your point of view of the world different now?
Yeah, I would
it's not
say
just,
I'm a
it's not
bit.
just you and I, it's us and him.
Well, I would say I'm a bit of a hypocrite because I'm saying, yeah, you need to go out and live on your own. But I look at my precious baby boy and I'm like, don't ever leave me. Like, live with me until you're 40. I don't mind at all,
Yeah, right?
But,
Obviously, we're like 15 to 18, 20 years away from
yeah,
pushing him out the
absolutely.
door. But yeah, those feelings are already starting to come up.
And when I think about it as a parent, I'm like, him living with me until 40 is my benefit. Me cutting him off at 21 or 18, that's going to benefit him because he's going to learn and he's going to learn how to thrive in that environment independently without depending on us, right? So I think as a parent, the hard part is putting what you want aside and doing what is really best for your kids and creating the environment for them to do well and be successful.
Yeah.
Even when it's hard for you and for them.
As a dad, even I'm now thinking about, obviously all the financial lessons that we learned growing up was kind of out of necessity, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We had to grind, we had to work hard, we had to save. Obviously now our son is going to be in a very different upbringing, a very different situation. He's not going to be, I think, in such a rough place as we were.
Definitely.
So as a dad, I'm like, do we make it harder on him? Like, do we be tough on him? Or do we give him the resources that we now have to help him go further? It's always a toss-up between what's best, right?
Yeah.
And I think all of us parents can relate to that. There is no handbook. There is no manual. There's no exact right or wrong way to do things. We just take it every day as we go and do the best we can, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about gender roles. Traditional, what we saw back in our parents' time and what we've seen culturally versus today. Obviously, we're a very, very new generation. We're changing things up. What do you think the difference is? And do you like the traditional or are you more modern? Where do you sit on that?
I would say I'm kind of in the middle.
Okay.
I do like the traditional role of the man providing the security and the safety for the wife. I just think that really helps the relationship dynamic. I don't believe in the traditional role of the men being the breadwinner. I do think that the time that we live in now, men and women, they both need to be the breadwinners. They both need to contribute to the household. And honestly, that helps you win together. I would also add that one of the biggest mistakes that I think couples make today when they get married is having separate accounts.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that creates a very mine and yours mentality. And I think that your finances look so much better when you both are working from the same account because you can save together, you can spend together, and you can make it together.
Let's say you're coming, two people or one person's coming into the marriage with a little bit more assets than the other person. How do you balance that, right? That's another thinking that people have.
Definitely.
Is or maybe like, for example, I'm a doctor, you're not, so it kind of creates that sense of mine and yours, right? Which I agree with you. is not a good thing, or it makes additional hurdle to marriage that is already hard enough.
Yeah.
So yeah, how do you address that?
Well, I think if you're deciding to get married, at that point, you need to come to terms with the fact that there is no more mine and yours.
Yeah.
And if you want to live with this mine mindset, then maybe marriage is not for you, because that's not what marriage is, right?
Right.
And especially when you have kids, how far is this individualistic mindset going to take you? Then like, what is that going to look like when you need to pay for daycare? How do you decide whose account that goes out from?
Yeah.
Right? And it just creates an unnecessary divide that could very easily be avoided.
I think we can agree that one of the key pillars in marriage and in finances is communication, right?
Right.
What do you think good communication looks like?
Honest, transparent, to the point. Okay? Yes, obviously respectful, all of that goes without saying. But I feel like in a marriage, if you have the understanding and you know that both parties are coming with good intent, you don't need all this extra fluff. Like, let's be honest with each other, let's be transparent, and honestly, create a safe space where both people are able to come and be honest about their opinions on what they want. Because when you create an environment where one person is feeling like they can't be honest with you, that's only creating more space.
Yeah.
And like it's just creating a dynamic where both of you can't be open with each other.
I feel like we are just scratching the surface. We're just talking about getting into the relationship, the communication, building that foundation, right? And then going into investing, wealth building, strategies, those are all kind of more complex topics that do come quickly when you're married and when you have somebody else kind of joining and making decisions together, right? Now, even for us, we will definitely talk more about it in the future, about our real estate journey, how we got into it, the successes and the mistakes that we made. We have certainly made plenty of them. But real quick before we go, what advice do you have for those young, maybe they newly got married, or maybe they've been married for a little bit, but they have that struggle and that back and forth, but about maybe they're not comfortable talking about money, talking about finances, or maybe they're kind of lacking the inspiration for a strategy. What advice would you give for them?
Be patient, be ambitious, and be honest with each other. Being scared and holding back is not going to help you. It's not going to help your partner. Talking about it might actually do something for you and might benefit you in some way. So don't be scared to open up.
Right, because at the end of the day, your partner is your teammate.
Absolutely.
And as we know, teamwork makes the dream work. And the dream has to be collective, right? So on that note, I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. We're going to come back. This is not the only time Iqra's going to be here. We're having such a great time, and I think you have so much more to add. So yes, stay tuned. If you like what we're talking about, hit the link below, subscribe, and even drop us comments or questions, things that you want us to address the next time. And also, of course, remember, I am doing a live real estate development webinar for our King's Private Equity Group development deal on Friday, October 18th. So also hit the link below, register for that. And I'm going to talk about all things investing, building from the ground up, how we're going to maximize margins, get better ROIs, and how you can partner in with us on a large deal like that. So Friday, October 18th, hit the link below, register. I can't wait to see you guys there. Thank you so much.